Okay, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, depending on where you are in the world. We're so glad you could join us for our second AFSUG Business Analytics Big webinar. I know there is a bit of an echo. I'm not sure if that's from your side, Louis, or if it's me.
No, I'm not.
Okay, so today we take a deep dive into SAP Business Object Data Services 4.1. I am Zimki Tabua, and I will be the moderator for today. I'm joined by our presenter, Louis Digouveia, and I hope I'm pronouncing his surname correctly.
That's fine.
Business Objects Data Services 4.1 or 4.1 as some might say. Over to you, Louis.
Hi everyone, this is Louis here. As Simkita explained, I'm the Divisional Director at BR Blue Consulting. Assuming everyone can hear me now fine. If you can't hear me, just let me know. Okay, so I'll be doing the data services. I'll be giving you an overview of what is to come. I'm mainly going to be focusing on 4 and what is coming out in 4.1. So you'll get an idea. Well, I'll also have 1 or 2 slides just explain what data services is in case you don't know what data services is. Okay, so if we go to the next slide. All right. Some of you might be familiar with this. This is the product portfolio SAP offers. So it's quite an extensive portfolio. You've got the enterprise information management, the BR side, and the EPM stack, as well as the GRC. The one I'm going to be focusing mainly is data services, which would then fall into your data integration and data quality management. So it just gives you an idea of where the data services actually fits within this. Okay. Okay. What I'm trying to show over here is the data services would be this middle core part of here where you would see the data profiling data services engine. And some of its capabilities obviously is to pull from sources. The sources that it can pull from is SAP CRM, SAP ERP, SAP NetWeaver, SAP Business One. So that's all your SAP applications. Then obviously you can go to, how should we say, database level, where you can pull for Sybase, HANA, Oracle, SQL, DB2, and recently added is Hadoop. And we've got PeopleSoft, Oracle, Siebel. Now you'll see the PeopleSoft and Oracle are actually listed separately. The reason it's listed separately is that the connections are actually done at an application level. Same with SAP. So now the question is, why do we say at application level? That just means that when it actually connects, it uses the application's dictionary to decipher. So instead of seeing table names just like VBRK, it would show that, but it would also show that it's a sales billing document header. So it would actually give you extra information. Then we can also then connect to files, XML, HTML, Excel. So just from that, we can see that we can connect to basically a database, applications, and unstructured data. Then from there, it would then flow into data profiling. Data profiling is part of data service. It just basically profiles your data and tells you, how many columns have certain types of values. And then we go through the data service engine. And then from there, we can do cleansing, validation, and text data processing. And then we can load that into either SAP BW, HANA, Sybase IQ, or Sybase ASE, any one of those, or any other database, whether it would be Oracle, Microsoft SQL. And then from there, once you've loaded it, it can then be reported on. So you can have all your BR stuff on there, so your query reporting analysis. What you can also do is use it for data migration. What you'll also notice here on the top, you'll see on the top there's BAPIs, RDocs, web services. Now, another key feature that SAP Data Services has is you can actually use this to post transactions into ERP. So, for instance, we could read data from a database, transform it, and get it ready to load, and then load it to ERP via BAPIs or RDocs. So it's quite a powerful tool, so you can use it actually just from looking at it. You can use it as an ETL tool. You can use it as a tool to actually do data migration. So it's got a few hats that it plays. Also what you'll notice is right at the bottom in this little green box is that we've got impact analysis and data lineage. So impact analysis basically, if you're going to change something, it will show you all the objects after they'll be affected. And then data lineage is basically, if you've got a report and you want to know where the data comes from, it will show you the whole flow. So it will actually show you that report's based on this universe is made up of this object, that object comes from this table, and that table is populated by data source, and then the source is, Oracle or wherever it came from. So it's just to give you an idea of some of the features that it has. It's a bit of a high-level overview. What I'll do now is I'm going to start going to one or two of the extra features. Now, just to give you an idea, data services has enterprise-wide data access. So what are we saying? These are all the types of connections. Now, I did mention some of them now, but from a database perspective, these are all the databases supported out of the box. Even though some of the databases might not be here, you still got your ODBC connection. So something like FoxPro, you would then use ODBC. But most of the other databases, very well-known databases, would be in that list. Then we've got the applications. As mentioned earlier, applications, you connect to an application layer, which means you would use the actual dictionary of the application. A good example is J.D. Edwards. You know, if you look at their database, all the tables have F and a few numbers. Whereas now if you connect via a data service, it would actually show you, you know, the table name, the description, what it means, rather than just F and a few numbers. Same with SAP R3. We've got our app connection, BAPI, RDocs, and extractors that we can use. Then we obviously got our file connections, so we can connect to any text file, Excel file, COBOL, and then we can also now connect to Hadoop. That is new in 4.1. Then from a mainframe, we can connect to Adabas, RMS, both direct and change data. Then we've got our unstructured data, which used to only support 6 languages. Now it's been extended to 31 languages. So you can see there's been quite a bit of work there in 4.1 to get it up to 31 languages. All right. Now, one of the new features in 4.1 is the design time data viewer. Now, this is something that's pretty handy in the sense that when you actually doing a work and you're doing a transform, a query transform, in the past we couldn't actually see, you know, what would actually happen after we do the transform. We'd have to run it. Whereas now we can actually say, okay, let us have a view of how it would look, and it would show us here at the bottom, you know, that's how it's going to look after the transform. So you'll actually see the source and the target and how it will look. And what's nice about it is you don't even need the target table. You can just do this anytime within the whole process. Okay, I'll give you a view of this later, how it works. I'll actually demo a piece on how this works. Another new feature that we've got is XML map. Now this is if you're working a lot with XML files. Okay, seems like we've lost the file. Just hang there. Document. Let me just load it again. Looks like we've lost the presentation. Okay, there we go. Alright, so that's the XML map. So this is, you know, if you're using a lot of XML files, it allows you to, you know, do nest and unnesting. You could do this before, but it was a lot more difficult. This has got a few extra features which allows you to do it much more easily. Alright. Then one of the features we have is text data processing. Now this text data processing has been there since 4, okay, so it's not something new. But now within the text data processing, this is a nice piece of functionality that a lot of people don't speak about. What it allows you to do is it allows you actually to extract from text, so you can have paragraphs of text in a database or in a blob like column, and you can extract specific information. So we'd be able to extract just, you know, a person's name, we'd be able to extract a date, a title, and, you know, give some sort of organization to have an idea of where they are. And there's other types of things. This is very customizable. You can, you know, set up what you would want to extract. From that perspective, this is where I've said now it's been expanded to 31 languages in 4.1. They've added support for binary documents and expanded for Twitter content. So you can see there's quite a bit of work in this text data processing. So, like for instance, on the Twitter content, the way they've expanded is they've given you an emoticon library, you know, so you can actually use emoticons, so, you know, all smiley faces, sad faces, to actually be able to distinguish that and tell you whether it's a happy sentiment or a negative sentiment. Alright. Alright. One of the other pieces of functionality that data service has is data quality. Now, data quality, that on its own is a big story and a big discussion point. Just to give you an idea, a high-level overview, just to understand how data quality works, is you usually start with data assessment. So data assessment, this is where you measure, analyze, and say, you know, what does my data look like now? If I needed to clean it, where would I go? How would I do it? What is the rules going forward? And then once you know everything that you want to cleanse, the rules you want to implement, and how you want to go about it, you would then look at data cleansing. Now the data cleansing, this is where you would then pass, standardize, and correct. So this is obviously where you go through it, you standardize everything in it. So for instance, a simple example is everyone's got telephone numbers, and some people will store 011-453-7660, and others would say, open bracket 011, close bracket 453-7660. That's just an example. So that's something, you want to standardize, okay? And then if there's any incorrect, you want to correct it. Then the other side of it is your next phase is enhancing your data. So enhancing your data is adding extra information to it. So you might have, for instance, someone's name, but you would then be able to enhance the data by saying, is that a male strong, name, or is it a female weak name, and you'd be able to categorize whether it's male, female, whether it's a strong, weak name. And there's other things that you could enhance. That's just an example of what you could enhance. Then we have afterwards match and consolidate. Now match and consolidate, basically what you would want to do here is you want to match and consolidate. So let's put it this way, you can do fuzzy matches so that you can identify multiple records. Okay, and then once you have identified the multiple records, you can then consolidate and bring it down to one record. So this would help you to remove any duplicates when you're reporting on. So to give you an example, if you're reporting on sales and you have the same account, created 3 times in different billing notes, you want all of those sales to show under the same customer. So you would then consolidate, match, and find those fuzzy matches. And then from there, you've got continuous monitoring. The continuous monitoring, you can build reports, on top of data services to say how you want to monitor and your data, but it's best to implement information steward separately, which has special KPIs that you can then monitor your data properly. Okay, so data services plays a big role in the data quality, but if you're really going to go strong into data quality, you need to consider having information steward coupled with data services. Okay, so that's data quality. Now, just to give you an idea of data quality, what you'd obviously have is your data that comes in. We can cleanse it and then bring it out and put it, in a structure of how, readable. So this is just showing you, it started unreadable, and then we've now put it into standardized output and made it very readable. Okay. Then, part of data quality, we've got global address cleanse. Now, as you can see, the global address, everything green, that's where we've got a lot of global address cleansing. For South Africa, it's not quite there yet. You can probably do global address cleanse up to suburb level, but you won't be able to go to street level. But the reason I've included this is to show that it's actually passed a new certification. In 4.1, they've included India. Hopefully in 4.2 or 3, we'll see South Africa. And they've also passed the certification for France. Okay. So currently, there's several certificational criteria that Data Services Global Address Cleanse adheres to. It's Canada, it's an American, Australia, and now France. Okay. These are rigid standards already set up, to say these are what you need to pass by for the cleansing. Okay. Now, just as I mentioned earlier, we can extract data from SAP, ERP, or CRM. Now, the way you can extract is several ways. One of the strong ways to extract is using AppApp. Now, what this does is when you make an AppApp data flow, it already does the AppApp code for you, it generates it for you. You don't have to sit there coding. So we say we want to make an R3 AppApp data flow. We say, here's our source, here's our target, this is what we want to transform. And within there, it will already generate the AppApp code. And usually what it does is it would send that AppApp code to SAP, and then SAP would run it, drop the data, and then Data Services would pick up that data. Now that data that it picks up, it used to be in a staging. It used to be in a folder, and it would serve as a staging area. Now in 4.1, we don't need that anymore. In 4.1, we have a direct RFC communication that happens that you can set up, and the data stream happens immediately. So this has a few effects. This obviously improves the data loads, because before you would have to wait for SAP to dump the data into the file, then it would only read the file. Whereas now the streaming happens immediately, and this improves the way the data is loaded. But everything else is the same. You'll still see your AppApp data flows. You'll still have your support for your different versions. You'll still have execute preloaded or auto-generated. All right. Okay, SAP has started investing heavily into its big data. So everyone knows you've got the HANA. It's an ongoing thing. There's more and more marketing being done about it. So one of the other things SAP started supporting now is Hadoop, so that we can load into it and obviously extract into it. Because even though SAP has HANA, it does not necessarily mean that the client's going to be running HANA. Okay, so there's a lot of extra work that's gone into 4.1, and you'll actually see when I log into 4.1 a little bit later, you'll see where they're Hadoop, and you can set up the connections, and it can make use of a Hive, and it can do push downs and do the map reduce at Hadoop level. Okay, now from a strategic point of view, SAP's strategic focus is to use data services as a data integrator or its ETL tool. Okay, so any work outside of SAP or outside of BW, SAP will carry on using data services. They've also done quite a lot of extra work to make it work better with SAP HANA. Many of the solutions, when SAP HANA is sold, it actually comes bundled with DR. So when you buy SAP HANA Enterprise Edition, you'll actually get DR, which is data services. It just doesn't have data quality in there. And you'll have that available to load into SAP HANA. You would also obviously have SAP SLT, which you could use to load into HANA. Also, some of the key products that SAP is rolling out will use data services. So it's used part of information store. It's a key component of FIM, and it's used for also data governance, okay, and beyond demand. So it's the tools going forward from an ETL perspective for SAP. Okay, a little bit earlier I mentioned that we can do app data flows to extract data. Another way that you can use is the traditional BW extractors. Okay, from the beginning, not all the BW extractors are supported. There is a list, there's a SAP note that provides you all the SAP extractors that is available to be used. But what is nice is that you can leverage that same BW extractors that we can use from BW, and you can then pull it through here. So you do not need BW, if you want to use these extractors. You merely just need to activate these extractors within SAP ERP. These extractors are usually activated in transaction RSA 6, just to give you an idea. Okay, but you would still then build your whole flow. So as you can see, you've got your extractors, then you've got your query, and then you've got your target table. Your target table can be anywhere outside of SAP. Now, one of the new key features that was released in 4.1 is the Data Services Workbench. Now, you might have heard about this. There's not really much content out there about Data Services Workbench. This is a new Eclipse-based tool. Basically, going forward, SAP over time would like this to be the new look instead of Data Service Designer. But this is the first release. They've covered very few, I should say, functionality, or they haven't covered everything yet, but there's some very nice new features in here, and I'll give you a little demo just now to see how this works. This tool is it's simpler to use, it's easier to use, and does a lot of extra work behind the scenes. But yes, that's the new Eclipse-based GUI that they would like to use. Now, another thing that data services is used for is data migration. Okay, so just to give you an idea of how data migration works, when I say data migration, I'm talking about, I'm sure everyone's been through that pain where you go live with the ERP system or go live with a new accounting package. So usually you always have that phase where you need to take all your data, your master data from your old system, and put it into your new system. But there's always that trick where, business carries on. So if you just take the master data on a specific month and then you put it into ERP, then what about that time between, the data and go live? Then you have to redo that. And, what we find usually is there's always, you lose data. So now what I'm going to show you is a simpler way that, just before go live you could run it and then you'd have all your master data. So we've got your target environment, which in our case is SAP. We've got your legacy data environment. So your legacy data environment can either be from flat files, database, applications, or XML. Then we've got our staging environment, which we're going to use data services to achieve this. So we'd extract and profile the data. We'd cleanse the data. We'd then transform the data. And then from there, we can get information from SAP configuration. We can then validate and load. So when we validate and load, what actually happens there is before loading, we actually validate. So if in the data we say we're going to load a customer into company code 6330 or 6220, we actually make sure beforehand, does that company code exist? Does that plant exist? Does this material exist? And then it will load beforehand. Load it. When it loads, the loading can actually be done via RDoc, so that it will actually first load RDoc. You then need to load into SAP ERP and run that RDoc, and then only would it be created. or it can create files where RDocs don't exist, and then those files will be then loaded up by LSMW. Okay. And after that, we do a reconciliation. Once again, data service takes care of that. So what it does is it's got the data that it loaded from its legacy, then takes data that it loaded from the environment. This is obviously after the RDocs have been loaded. Okay, and then does a mini recon, and then we can then do reports on top of that to say, yes, you know, from our legacy system we have 100 customers, from our SAP system we have 98 customers, 2 didn't load, and then you can go investigate why those 2 didn't load. Okay, some of the reports do actually have errors, and it'll give you an idea of why those didn't load. Okay. Okay, I'm just going to switch over now. Let me see. Just need to switch over to my machine. Okay. Right. Okay, so if you guys want, you can make your screen full if you want to see it. I've just switched over to virtual machine. Alright, on this virtual machine I have Data Services 4.1 installed. As you can see there, 4.1 Service Pack 1. Okay, you have your traditional Data Service Designer, you have all your other components, then we have one extra thing, Data Services Workbench. This is that new GUI that I've told you that we can use. I'm just going to log in here just to give you an idea of how this works. Alright, so what we can do now is we can start a replication wizard. So it's got a wizard to show you how to do it. You can obviously do everything manually, but just to give you an idea, I'm just going to do it with the wizard, and then later on I'll actually show you manually. Okay. Alright. Okay, so here we go, choose our source. I'm going to go Microsoft SQL Server because I've got everything installed here. The database server name, so I'm going to go to Microsoft SQL. This is the server that I'm going to go to. Alright, so we're going to go, database server name is DS471, database name. I'm going from this database over here. I just need to get the name from it. Okay. We're going to go to that database name. Okay. Connecting, just got to enter my credentials. And what you can do is you can then test the connection. You can see the connection successfully. You can also see you've got all the extra things that you would usually have in a data store. I can go next. Then I can choose which tables I want. Alright, so I'm going to choose these two. Alright. From here you can also view, the table. You can also view the data if you want. So you can go view data properties. But for now, I'm just going to choose the 2 tables, go to the next step. Then we've got to choose our targets. So I'm going to say target again, Microsoft SQL Server. Okay, same server, but what I'll do is I'll go into a different database. So I'll push all the data into that database. So I'll go behind blue. So alright, once again, we've got all the stuff that we want. We can change the target owner name. We can test the connection. Connection test succeeded. Now go next. Okay, now it's asking, do you want to execute? So now if I just say finish, it's actually going to save it and execute the job. I'm going to say finish. I'll leave it like that. Okay. Now it's busy running, and there you go. You can see that it's loaded 38,000 rows. Progress was successful. It was 100%. If you have any errors, it would have showed it here. Okay. Now what we can also then see is if I just close that, here's the project we just created. Okay. There's the 2 data stores that's created. So you've got your source and your target connection. And if we go in over here, we can then see what it's done. So here's the 2 tables that's loaded. Yeah. We can double click over here, and then we can start seeing. So everything that you usually see in Data Service Designer, it is in here, it's just in a different place. So for instance, if I look at order details, there's the columns, there's, it'll tell you those numbers there, tell you that it's integer. And then if I click on the column, previously we have the mapping. If you want to edit the mapping, you would go in here. Now, if you've used Information Steward 4.1 or 4, you'll notice this look and feel has now come across from Information Steward into here. And this is just where you used to do the same mapping that you would usually do before. So we can say unit price times 2, or we can just leave it. Okay. If we go back to the order details, you can now come back and see the properties for the table. So here's the columns, here's the keys, here's the indexes. You can add more, or you can filter the data. There's a few extra options. Okay. And you can also control whether it's a delta load or a full load from here. Okay. What you can also do is, if you want to go back to your connections, you can add more tables. So you can go over here and add extra tables. You can also then see the connection, and we can test the connection. So as you can see, it's got a very information design tool kind of look and feel, Eclipse-based look. All right. You can also then go back and see all the jobs, in the past, how you've loaded it. So just to give you an idea, here's all my old jobs. There's the one we just ran. Okay, or I can go to another one, and it'll show you the whole history if you've loaded it several times. Okay, and then you can also execute it again. So we can just run the job, and it'll run again. Okay, and there we go. You see it completed, and you can see that the first time it took 3 seconds. Now it took 2 seconds. So it's actually gone quicker the second time around. All right. So let's close that, minimize this. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to log into Data Services Designer. Everyone should be used to this by now if you've worked with it. All right. Now the first thing is, if I open a project, the one that I just created in the Data Service Workbench is also here. And just to give you an idea, if I open it, you'll see that it does a whole bunch of extra things for us. So it's got the code here, SQL, to create the tables. Okay. Then here's the actual data flow. So it automatically creates all the data flows in the background. And then the creating of the indexes. Okay, so you can see that by using the workbench, it actually saves you a bit of work when doing simple replication taken from source to target. Okay, let's close all of this. All right, let me give you another example over here. Okay, so now I've loaded another project. In this project, just to give you an idea, a normal project you would usually execute here, same as I would have executed in the Data Service Workbench, and then it executes this in its steps. Then, you got your workflows. In your workflows, you got all that, and then you got your data flows. So this is just to show you, the type of projects you can build. Now, let's go to design time data. Now, what I mentioned earlier in one of the slides is you've got your source, you've got your target. So we're going from source to target. In the query, we are doing some adjustments. I'm only saying take these columns. On the profit, I'm saying net sales minus cost. Now, in the past, the only way you would know the impact is if you actually ran the job and looked in the target table. Now, what we can do is we can actually click this button over here and then say, okay, this is actually what will happen. So we can see over here profit. Okay, earlier I said it's net sales minus cost. So if we just go over here, here's a net sales minus the cost would then give us that profit of 714. So just to give you an idea, we can actually view it. It hasn't ran yet. If I go delete the contents of the table, this will still show us what the impact would be. Okay, nice new feature that happened. All right. Then just to show you some of the other new things that have came in from a data store perspective. Remember earlier I said if you make an SAP connection. So if we go here, advanced. In the past, we had the shared directory. Now you actually have an option for RFC. Okay, obviously for this RFC, you first need to create an RFC connection available in SAP. So in SM59, if I remember correctly, you have to go in there, create a connection that DS can speak to, and then you can do it. It's fairly quick. Okay. Then remember I mentioned Hadoop. Here's the extra part over here, and there you can see that we can actually now create a connection for Hadoop where previously that was not there. And from a transform perspective, there's the new XML validation or XML map that we can use that previously wasn't available. All right. I think that's everything. Okay. Can switch back to Q&A. All right. Okay, we can switch to Q&A. Zim?
Okay, thank you very much, Louis. We really appreciate your presentation, and I think a lot of us probably know more about data services than what we did before. I don't see any questions in the queue right now, so if anyone has a question to ask, please press *6 on your keypad to be able to ask questions.
I see one question here. It says, what about namespace of APAP Dataflow generate APAP programs? This was from Alpa Derisi. Okay, the APAP Dataflows, once you've generated the APAP Dataflows within data services, there is functionality to upload it, or you can just generate the APAP program and go into SAP and create it. The namespace, you can either create your own namespace or you can use whatever your company is already using. So it's not a difficult thing. I hope that answers the question. I see another question here. Is it possible to schedule jobs where you can specify dynamic parameters, like, for example, dates for the last 10 days? Okay, when you schedule a job, there is different ways to schedule a job. You can obviously say, it'll be on this day, that day. But there is different ways. You just got to be very, how should we say, creative. So you've got your normal data services. You've also got the schedule that you can use from Business Objects. So if you use a schedule from Business Objects Enterprise, in there you can say it must execute every X days, for instance. In other ways, you can also schedule it to execute every day, but you just inside your data services job build logic to say, if it isn't this day or that day, don't run with the rest and just terminate. So there's different ways that you can do it. I hope that answers the question.
There's another question here from Antonio. Does it handle XLT transformation of XML files?
Okay. I haven't worked too much with the XML functionality. I can check for you, but I do think it handles it, and then you've got the new XML transform that should be able to handle it. But like I said, I haven't worked lots with this. Okay.
Another question on XML. Does the XML mapper handle? Yeah.
Like I said, I haven't really worked too much with the XML. I have to check on this. I really haven't done too much work with it. I've done more work with, obviously, tables, data files, HANA, but not too much with XML.
Okay, Petro is asking if there is a recording that will be available.
Okay, so that's,
yes, there will be.
Tell me if you've made a recording. Okay, I see another question. Any standard JSON adapter coming? In later releases, it has been highlighted that probably 4.3 will have a JSON adapter. I am on the Information Management Council. I am pushing for this, but there is a workaround for it. You can create your own Python code. Yes, I know it's not the most friendly thing, but what you can do is you can create a user-defined transform, and you can then add your own Python code, which would then be able to go and get your beginning and your end for the tweets that you want to load, and then go from there. I'm assuming the JSON adapter you wanted for Twitter, so that is the way. But yes, in 4.3 it is highlighted as a possible functionality that will come. Unfortunately, it won't be in 4.2. Okay. What is the best way to handle communication between BODS and PR? Okay, I'm not aware of any direct communication available for BODS and PR. There's obviously different ways to handle them. You can use web service calls, or you can use text file calls. It really depends on your architecture. I wouldn't say there's a best way. I'm not familiar with a best practice, if you want to call it that. Okay. Let's see another question. Are SAP Delta data sources supported? Okay. So the Delta data sources, that's your ERP BW extractors. Yes, they are supported. Not all of them are supported. When I say supported, you've got a whole bunch of extractors. Over time, SAP is adding more and more extractors, but there are a few extractors already supported. For you to know which extractors are supported, you need to obviously log on to SAP Notes. There's a note that tells you which extractors are supported. There's also a table that you can view. So if you're in your ERP system, you can go, there's a table name can't remember the tail name, but you can go in there and it shows you all the supported extractors for your version. But also for you to use your BW extractors, your ERP needs to be on a specific version. There's a specific PI_basis that needs to be up to before you can load it. So if your ERP isn't up to a specific patch level, you won't be able to use those extractors, unfortunately. I see Antonio says, what version of Python? I'm not sure where that question's angled. You would usually do your Python coding inside data services. So I'm not actually sure what version data services uses, but inside data service you would go there and you do all your scripting in there. So yeah, we do have an example of that. I just don't have it on this machine. But yes, you do all your coding within there. Okay. Does 4.1 RFC? Yeah, see Shadley has asked another question. Does 4.1 RFC work with BW7? That RFC, what I was discussing was more the RFC for ERP. It does work with ERP. I haven't tested with BW yet, to be honest. I've got a client that we've done a rollout on 4.1 RFC, but that was using app data flows. So I haven't, to be honest, tested with BW, but that is something interesting that we would want to test. Okay. Any other questions?
Okay, it looks like that's it. Just a reminder to please complete the survey, which is located on the top right-hand side of the console. And to our presenter, Louis, thank you very much for that insightful presentation.
Okay.
And I think on behalf of our presenter, Louis Bigovea, and the Business Analytics DIACOM, we'd like to thank you for joining us. Thank you.